with Microsoft, for example, they may not have the equivalent. Dang, couldn't even hardly get it out. They may not have the equivalent of what the OCG book is. Welcome to Debt Free in IT. I'm your host, Mike. This podcast is for anyone who's looking to get into the IT industry, whether it's for a career change or you're just interested. I think you come to the right place. So in the last month or so, I've been covering a lot of cloud certifications. So I've covered AWS's cloud certification, the foundational one to get you started within AWS's environment. I've covered Cisco CCNP cloud certification, which is fairly new. And I think it's only right, since I've been on my cloud kick lately, that I cover Microsoft's Azure certification. So Azure is a cloud computing platform and service created by Microsoft. So this is Microsoft's version of the cloud, where AWS has their own version, Google has their own version, a couple other companies have their own version, and Microsoft has its own version. So I want to say Microsoft's version was probably one of the first ones in the forefront. I'm not exactly sure. So if you're in the comments, please correct me if I'm wrong. But Microsoft's Azure, as some people call it, some people say Azure. I like to say Azure because that's what it looks like to me. So Microsoft, if I'm thinking correctly, they was one of the first ones I know of to start bringing out their cloud service. So within their cloud service, it provides a wide range of cloud services such as computing power, storage, networking, databases, and a whole lot more, which allows organizations to build, deploy, and manage applications through Microsoft's data centers across the world. And then Azure is also what I like to say one of the big three cloud providers. So Microsoft's, they're one of the big three cloud providers, which I always like to say Amazon, Microsoft, and then Google. And like I said, there's a couple of other ones out there, but most of the time, if you go one of those routes, mainly probably Amazon and Microsoft is what I see the most of. So mainly if you go one of those routes, usually you're probably covering 85% of the job market that's dealing with the cloud. So I like to call it the big three. So Amazon, Azure, Google, like I said, the big three when it comes to the cloud. And just like with AWS and their foundational certification to learn the cloud, Microsoft has it also. And their certification is called the Azure Fundamentals AZ-900 certification. And just like with AWS, this Azure certification, the AZ-900, so it's at that beginner level of someone entering into that cloud environment. So if you're at an enterprise and they happen to be using Microsoft for their cloud provider, then this will be a good cert to get you familiar with everything that has to do with that Microsoft cloud or Azure. So it's a good way to get started. Like I said, it's that foundational certification that you can start. And then from there, you're going to start to get more advanced certifications. And as they get advanced, usually they're going to be a lot more hard. So today, we're going to look at what this exam costs, some of the topics covered, some study resources that I was able to pull together, and then also what type of career opportunities getting this certification may lead to. So let's get to it. So first, we're going to break down this exam. So the exam name is the Azure Fundamentals AZ-900 exam. The exam is roughly 45 minutes, ranging from 40 to 60 questions on the exam. The cost, when I checked, was roughly around $99 via Certiport or via Pearson VUE. So usually when something is done via Certiport, that means that you may have the option to test for this certification remote. So being that you may not have to go in somewhere to test for this certification. So you can be in the comfort of your own home and then have someone come online to proctor you for this certification. So sometimes that's what Certiport sometimes offers. So you just have to go and check. But if that is the case, I've never done the remote proctoring before. I heard it's a little bit tedious where you have to have different camera setups so where they can make sure you're not trying to look at any other resources and things like that. For me, I'm old school. I like to go ahead and schedule my certifications through Pearson VUE and go ahead and go in that thing and sit down and take that certification and then find out what I made afterwards. But with Certiport, you may have that option for this particular certification. But right now, like I said, it's $99, 45 minutes, 40 to 60 questions, which is not a bad investment to start to get your foot wet with this cloud environment. And then also what Microsoft has done that I think is unique. A lot of other companies do it too. I know CompTIA has this option. They call it a different name. But Microsoft has what they call is a exam replay. So this exam replay, you pay roughly $230, somewhere around that about. Sometimes you may get other discounts or something like that. But this exam replay, what it does is it gives you an extra attempt in case you fail on your first attempt. So instead of going through and paying for multiple attempts, so you get to go ahead and pay for this exam replay. And then if you happen to fail that first attempt, then you already got a second attempt there. Now, if you happen to go in there and you pass your first attempt, I'm thinking maybe you just probably lost your other half of your money. So it didn't really go into too far what happens if that was the case. I doubt you get a refund for it, but it's there for some people that are horrible at taking tests. So some folks, they're just horrible at taking any kind of test. So it's one of those things where you got that extra backup plan where you bought it in advance, where you can go ahead, tackle this certification. Hopefully you pass it on the first attempt. But if you don't, you got this exam replay, which gives you an extra attempt to take the certification. So like I said, a lot of companies have started implementing something similar to this. And I think it's pretty neat, especially if you're one that are horrible at taking exams. And then also if it's a difficult exam, like if something like this was offered for, let's say, the CCNP, which it may be. I haven't dug deep into it yet, but if something like this was available where maybe I'm paying full price for the first attempt, and then after that, maybe it's a discounted amount of maybe half price by me going ahead and buying that second attempt up front. That seems like something that, will be a pretty good deal, especially if you're one in a position where maybe you have to renew your CCNP for the job, or maybe in this case, you have to get this Azure you have to get this Azure certification for your job. So let's say that your job is starting to bring on some Microsoft cloud environment. They're starting to implement this. So a lot of times, as a company may start to implement this new environment, a lot of times they want their employees that's going to be working in this new environment or supporting this new environment, they want their employees to know about this environment and know about this cloud provider, whatever services they offer, how to go into it, how to implement different things within that cloud provider. So a lot of times this certification may be something that's needed for your job wise. In that case, buying that extra attempt, I think will be probably a good thing to do. That way, it relieves some stress because you know that, okay, I got this extra attempt already paid for just in case. That way it relieves a little stress, relieves a little pressure. You go in, knock it out the box the first time. That way you won't need that extra attempt. But if needed, you got it there waiting on you. And as we get to the exam topics on this certification, we have roughly a couple of domains that's covered. So the first domain covers 25 to 30% of the exam, and it's described cloud concepts. And then that breaks down to the following subcategories where you have described cloud computing, describe the benefits of using cloud services, and then describe the cloud service type. So as you see, it's going into this building up that knowledge of, okay, everything about the cloud environment. So far, from what the description says or what the topics, the examples of the topics, right now, this topic could probably be beneficial for any cloud environment. So just knowing what is the cloud, being able to describe it, some benefits of using it, and different service types. So this could go well along with any of the cloud providers. So it's helping you to get that foundational knowledge as you start to learn more and more and more about this platform. And then as we get to the second domain, this is where we start to see some of the topics get specific for the Azure platform. So the second domain covers roughly 35 to 40% of the exam. And it says describe Azure architecture and services. And pretty much this breaks down to describe the core architectural components of Azure, describe Azure compute and networking services, and then also describe Azure storage. So as you see now, you started out with that first domain, which covers wasn't vendor specific, was vendor neutral, teaching you about the cloud. You get into the second domain, this is where you started learning more about how their platform does things. So their platform, Azure, probably does things different from AWS, even though it's the same storage everywhere, but there's probably some differences between working with it in Azure and working with it in AWS. So as you see now, these topics is starting to get more vendor specific, which is specialized honing in just for this Azure platform, this Azure certification. There's third domain, which is roughly around 35% of the exam, is describe Azure management and governance. And it breaks down to a couple topics such as describe the cost management in Azure, describe some of the features and tools in Azure for governance and compliance, then also describe some features and tools for managing and deploying the Azure resources. And then also it has a couple more exam topics. So all of these exam topics, like I said, they roughly creates the whole exam. The beauty of these exam topics is you're able to go and study based on these exam topics. So it kind of gives you a little bit of insight to what you may see on the exam by looking at the exam topics. That way, as you go down and start learning the exam, you can start crossing off the topics. Then after you cross off all the topics, you should be ready to start testing. Sorry to interrupt this video. According to my YouTube analytics, 84% of my viewers are not subscribed. If I provided any value to you in any one of my episodes and you're not subscribed, please consider doing so because it does help out the channel. And also, if you're listening in your favorite podcasting app, please leave me a review and share this with a friend. Now back to your episode. So the next thing we want to look at is some study resources. So if I was one that's getting ready to take this exam or to start studying for this exam, the first thing you want to do, you just don't want to go in blind and just start studying different resources. Then that way you don't know what's going on. You ain't got no plan in place. So I'm going to go and start pulling together my resources. And then once I get my resources, I'm going to start studying. So one resource that we have is Microsoft Learn. So this is directly from Microsoft. It offers free, and then it also offers some paid learning resources that focuses on the learning objectives for the certification. And they also have a certification practice assessment on Microsoft Learn. So with Microsoft Learn, you kind of can go down different paths where you can choose the certification. Then it gives you a couple of different little modules that you can go through to learn that certification. And then also sometimes you have to keep an eye on Microsoft Learn because sometimes they will throw a lot of free challenges in there where you may be able to get one of their new certifications for a discount, or you may be able to take the track to learn it for free. I know they always have some kind of challenge or competition going on. So it's always good to just keep tabs on that website, Microsoft Learn, and that way just check it every now and then to see what's going on in the Microsoft streets. But like I said, with Microsoft Learn, they offer some free, also some paid resources that you can go on their website and learn, and it focuses directly on the certification that you're studying for. So with this being the first certification in their path, this fundamental certification, they have different modules you can go down, and these modules are based on the learning objectives for that certification. So a lot of times, a lot of different companies, they offer this also. You just have to kind of browse through the websites, just see what kind of discounts they may have going on, what type of sales going on. But a lot of times when a company that provides a certification, a lot of times when they have something, the resources for you to study with, a lot of times they usually are pretty good. Sometimes they may be a little pricey. Sometimes they're free, but for the most part, they're usually pretty good. So Microsoft Learn will be the first resource I can tell you to go and check out. And then the next resource, so if you ever hear me talk about a certification, you pretty much hear me mention this resource. So it's pretty much the exam book. So with the exam books for this Microsoft Azure Fundamentals certification, there's an exam book. I have the link in the description. It will be an affiliate link, so it does help out the channel if you use it. But if not, you can just go to Amazon and search for the same book. But I found a book called Microsoft Azure Fundamentals Certification and Beyond by Steve Miles. And one way I kind of find my book resources, so usually if it's a Cisco book, 9 times out of 10 I'm going with the OCG book. But then you'll find other vendors, like with Microsoft, for example, they may not have the equivalent. Dang, couldn't even hardly get it out. They may not have the equivalent of what the OCG book is. So they may have some other book, or they may have different other books written by different authors. So a lot of times, if that's the case for a certification I'm trying to study, one thing I do is I get them from Amazon. And one thing I do, I always look at the reviews, because usually if the book has a whole bunch of reviews, a lot of times those reviews is going to tell you if that book is worth getting, because you'll see people that leaves their review and they'll say, oh, this book helped me pass this certification. If you see a lot of those, that may be a pretty good book to get. If you see some where the book maybe don't have a lot of reviews, and then from those small amount of reviews, most of them are pretty bad, then that may be one to skip over. But with this book by Steve Miles, like I said, I checked the reviews. It has some pretty good reviews. So usually for me, I like to always have a book resource. Sometimes, like I said, you may not read through the whole book, but sometimes that book will go in deeper detail than the videos, which brings me to my next resource. So the next resource, like I said, if you're looking for some good videos, there's a couple companies out there for videos. So you have I can't think of any of them that's free that I know of, unless you find someone on YouTube that has some pretty good videos. I know there's a couple people that has some Cisco videos that's pretty good. So unless you find someone on YouTube that has some pretty good videos going over the certification, that may be a good free resource. Another video resource I like is Udemy or Udemy, however you want to pronounce it. A lot of times with Udemy or Udemy, though, what you have to do is once you find that video course that you're interested in, a lot of times you have to mark it on your wish list. When you mark it on your wish list, usually a day or two, maybe the same day, you'll get a notification that course is on sale. So let's say you log in, you find the course you want. That course is $150. Don't pay for it yet. Add it on your wish list. And then usually a little bit later, you may get a notification that this course is on sale. You go in there, the course is around about $15 to $20. So $15 to $20 for a good video resource for a certification. Like I said, that's a pretty good investment. So Udemy will be the next to the cheapest one. So Udemy. And then after Udemy, I like to use CBT Nuggets for a lot of my video resources. So they're a pretty good brand. So you can check out CBT Nuggets. And then also there's Pluralsight. So at Pluralsight, they offer some good videos too. And a lot of their stuff is based just on a lot of cloud certifications. And also, if possible, I'll put a link in the description. It may be an affiliate link. If you want to help a brother out, it will help out the channel. If not, just go directly to Pluralsight and just log in and check it out. I think they may offer a free trial. So I'm going to see if we are able to get a free trial, and I'll put it down in the description. But Pluralsight has some good reviews. I like CBT Nuggets also. And then, like I said, Udemy, if you want to pay a little bit for it, just make sure Udemy, and also with Amazon, you look at the reviews on each of one of these, whatever resource you're about to get. Usually the reviews will let you know if it's good or not. And then after you gather all your resources together, there's one other resource that's going to be vital in this equation. And that resource is going to be a good exam prep. So an exam prep, pretty much as you may know, or you may not know, an exam prep is kind of like a test simulator. So what happens is you got your resources together, you got your book, you got your videos, you got any questions or flashcards or whatever, you go through studying. And then usually what I like to do a couple weeks before time for me to take the exam, I start just testing with exam preps. I use the exam prep. So the last 2 weeks or so, I start just going through the exam prep every day. So with this exam prep, like I said, it's not, you're not going to see the same questions. You see similar questions on the same technology. Usually the exam preps may be extremely hard. A lot of times I find that the ones that's extremely hard usually makes it easier when you take the actual exam. So with these exam preps, like I say, you want to get a legitimate resource. For me, if you looked at any of my videos, so far I'm a big fan of Bosun. So I'm a big fan of Bosun products. Like I use their exam prep for the CCNA. And like I said, you don't see the same questions, but you see harder questions. So with Bosun, just being transparent with Bosun, when I was studying for the CCNA, I don't think I passed the Bosun exam not even one time. I was bumming them things. But from going through those Bosun exams, looking at why this is the answer, why this ain't the answer, when I went and took that certification, the certification seemed extremely easy. I ain't gonna say extremely easy. Don't get me wrong, but the certification seemed a little bit easier than the exam prep. In which, in my case, I ended up passing that certification on my first attempt. And back then, when I took it, the CCNA, you had to take it 2 tests at the time. So I passed both tests on my first attempt, and I used the Bosun studied exam prep. So You got other exam preps out there. You also, just like I say, with exam preps, you want to do your due diligence because you do have ones out there that's kind of somewhat in that gray area, kind of, you don't want to get an exam dump. That could be crucial to your career, but you want to make sure you get a legitimate resource. So there's a couple of them out there. One of my favorites is Bosun, so usually I always recommend them. They're not sponsoring anything here, but like I said, usually if it's a good resource, I recommend it. So you want to get that exam prep and start going over prepping for that exam as it gets time for you to start going through to take their certification. And then the next thing, some of this I touched on a little earlier, but some tips to pass the exam. So the main tip is to just create your study plan. So, you want to carve out some time during your day. When you carve out that time, you want to make sure that you can stick with that plan. So usually it depends on how much time I have. So lately, I've been trying to study for the CCNP. I haven't really had a lot of time. So lately, the plan I've been doing is, and actually I saw this from another YouTuber that makes IT content, and it made sense when I heard it. But pretty much what I've been doing this time is I'll go through, watch the videos. After I watch some of the videos, I may take the exam prep, because most of the exam preps, you can filter them based on some of the exam topics or the domains. So let's say if I watch domain 1 and 2, I might go through, filter the questions on domain 1 and 2, and then just see where I'm weak at. Or either I may watch all the videos, take one of the exam preps, the whole test, and it's good. Usually it tells you what domains you're weak on. Then those domains that I'm weak on, I may go back and start reading on those. So that way I'm utilizing my book too. And I say that's the case if you have a short amount of time you're trying to get ready for this certification. That seems to be the fastest way. But usually if I have a lot of time, meaning in a couple of months or so, let's say if I got 3 months, usually the way I like to do it is kind of a overkill probably. What I like to do is I usually devote an hour a day. One day that might be looking at the videos on a certain domain. The next day it might be reading on that same domain, highlighting what I'm reading. The next day it might be me just typing what I'm reading, creating my notes from what I highlighted from the day before we're reading. And then the next day maybe doing any kind of labs or any kind of flashcards I may have created. And like I said, usually that's that takes a longer time. It's going to take a couple of months to go through a whole exam. But for me, I prefer that way if I have the time, just because to me, by me utilizing those going over those same domains multiple times by looking at it, reading it, then coming back, making notes off of it, I done cover that same domain 3 times. A lot of times to me, it seems like I retain it a little bit better. But that may not be the case for everyone. It depends on what kind of learning style you got. So you have to learn what kind of learning style you got. Some folks can just look at the videos on 1.5 speed or 2 speed, and that's all they need. Some people can do that. Some people have to look at the videos, then they also may have to read it. I'm kind of in that category. Then you got some people, they can just look at the videos, do a couple labs, and they're good to go. So you have to find out what type of learner you are, but the biggest thing is creating some sort of plan that you can stick to. So the next thing we want to cover is the career opportunities this certification may provide for you. So with Azure being one of the main cloud providers, well, not Azure, but Microsoft. By Microsoft being one of the main cloud providers, their cloud service is Azure. By them being one of the main cloud providers, I think it gives you a pretty good chance of transitioning to the cloud if that's what you're trying to do. Because whether you get Azure or AWS or Google, like I said, I think they pretty much cover up the big majority of the market, especially Azure and AWS. I hear them more than Google, but like I said, Azure or AWS, either one of them. So if you get one of them, 9 times out of 10, you're going to see some kind of job opening that's looking for someone that knows a little bit of Azure. And now, even though this is the fundamental certification, meaning that it's not no high level certification, but sometimes you still see where a employer may be looking for someone with any kind of Azure knowledge. So this may be, you may be coming in as a help desk of supporting a cloud environment. So they need you to know something about the cloud. So a lot of times with these new AWS and Azure and different cloud certifications, then also, like I said, you got the Cloud Plus too. But a lot of times with these cloud certifications, I say new, even though they've been out there for some years, but it's still not a whole lot of people that's up on the cloud. So I think that provides a good career opportunity too, because that way, by you not being able to find a lot of people that may be totally up on it, like I said, there's still some people this is totally foreign language to them. So, but like I said, there's a lot of people that's into the cloud too. So don't get me wrong, it's more than it was. It's way more than it was. But also, I think it still provides that you still have that window of opportunity where they may have some kind of cloud support role where you may not have to know the deeper level technology of this Azure, or you may not have to have that higher level certification of Azure, but you can start out with this fundamental, get yourself in there, then start working your way up towards those higher level certifications. So it may be where the job may say, okay, you got this fundamental certification, we're going to hire you based on that. And also, you passing the interview and everything, but we're going to hire you based on that. But then once you get here, we want you to get this other certification. So you already got the foundational one or the fundamental one. So then once you get there and you start working, they want you to be working towards this other higher level certification. So you have many different ways that could go career-wise. So I think it's a good career opportunity. Like I said, the cloud is here to stay. It's getting more and more popular. I'm pretty sure more and more organizations have started to transition to the cloud or some type of cloud. Like I said, so learning the cloud, like I said, is not going to hurt your career. So everyone eventually is going to have to know a little something about the cloud. My next thing, if I can ever get past this CCNP, is going to be try to learn something about the cloud, go into some more cloud. I started it before, but then like something else came up. So I need to knock out this CCNP. But like I said, after that, one of my priorities, I think I said it in my one of my early videos, is the cloud, and also get my hands dirty with a little bit of Linux. So like I said, I believe getting this certification will put you in the one step in the right direction. So that brings me to the end of this episode. Hopefully you found some value in this episode. If you're watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you're on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook, you can follow me at Debt Free in IT. If you have any questions or comments, you can email me at debtfreeinit@gmail.com, or you can visit the website debtfreeinitwithmike.com. Other than that, I'll see you next week. Peace.